I'm fine, Jim. How are you?
Why are you scowling at me already?
I wasn't. That was a repressed smile.
You ready? Okay. It is 11 a.m., November 28th, 2022. We're here at the Commission Chambers, Uintah County. The regular scheduled commission meeting. If we could, I'd ask everybody to shut your phones off or put them on silent. We will start out with prayer today by Becky Richards and the pledge by Dana Brown.
Father in heaven, we're grateful to be here today. We're grateful for the bounties that we have and the things that we can be grateful for. We're grateful for this country that we live in and the freedoms that we enjoy. And help us to remember that. Remember that we are the same here in this valley. We thank you again and ask for the presence here at this meeting in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I failed to excuse Commissioner Horrocks today. He's gone for the week. So the next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the November 21st, 2022 meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes of the November 21st, 2022 regular meeting.
I guess I can second, can I?
Yeah, you can.
I'll second that. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Next is the review of counter signatures, certified list. Report of warrants and review of counter signatures, certified list of claims.
Commissioners' warrants from November 23rd in the amount of $25,578,897.23. The major one in here is the defeasance of the bond for $25,323,496.73. This will be taken care of today at 1 o'clock. So with that, Commissioners, there are several claims. First one is check number 383128 to ETJ Law in the amount of $3,597.92. Check number 383190 to Staples for $750. They did not get purchase orders on that one. And the check number 383205 to U.S. Bank for $25,323,496.73. That is the claims, Commissioners.
Okay. Any questions? Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept and approve the counter signature of certified list of claims as presented.
Okay, I'll second. Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Cemetery certificates.
Do not have any today, Commissioners.
None today.
None today.
Tax matters. I know we have a few.
Yes, my first one I have is a serial number 050420002. This is the property just north of the airport that the county purchased mid-year, and this is the balance of the taxes that were not paid at the time of closing because the county and the city owns it. So I'm requesting abatement for $1,341.01 and to put it on the tax roll as tax exempt for next year.
Okay.
1,341 and
And
1.
1 penny.
Okay, entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve. Now, this is a rebate? Is it
No,
a refund, or is
it's-
it just
it's-
removing it from the
Do it,
tax?
it's an abatement
It's an abatement
because we're not going to pay it. The city's not going to pay it.
in the amount of $1,341.01 and move
Correct.
the parcel to the tax exempt.
Correct.
Okay. I'll second that motion. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Wendy? All right.
Commissioners, I'm requesting a tax adjustment for serial number 050630019 in the amount of $704.36. This property was being taxed as a secondary residence, and it was sold halfway through the year in July, and it became a residential property. And so for the whole year of 2022, it was on the tax rolls as a secondary residence. And so for those 6 months, the assessor has changed that status to residential, which would be a decrease in their taxes in the amount of $704.36.
Okay. So it became a primary?
Yes,
Resident.
yes, it became a residential exemption, yeah.
Okay.
Primary residence from the secondary, yeah.
Okay. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the tax adjustment of $704.36 to reflect a change in the status of the property as presented by Wendy.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Thank you. Business licenses today.
Good morning, Gabby Hawks Blackburn with Community Development. We just have one today. It's Fleet Pride Inc., located at 2364 East Highway 40 in Vernal, parcel
What's the name
number.
of that again?
Fleet Pride, it's all one word.
Right.
Yep. The parcel number is 650-129. This is located in the C2 heavy commercial zone. This is a wholesale/retail sale of heavy-duty parts. We've had fire, building, and the health department check it out, and they all are good to go. And so we recommend approval of this business license with the condition that they follow all fire, health, and building rules and regulations.
Okay. Any questions? Entertain a motion.
It's a commercial.
Yep.
That's okay. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the commercial business license for Fleet Pride with the provision and the understanding that they abide by all fire code and building regulations as presented by Gabby.
Okay, I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gabby. Next item on the agenda would be a bid award, emergency management.
No.
Oh, so a bid award for the Western Park bleachers?
Good morning, Commissioners. Melanie Silcox, Western Park. We had 3 bids submitted last week. After reviewing the bids, we would like to go with William Peterson Associates, Inc. out of Salt Lake City. The total price is $21,943.58. That's for 2 bleachers, 30-foot, 6-row, including freight.
So that met all the criteria that you put out.
Yes, we put out that they needed to be aluminum and transportable. All 3 bids were there. We had 1 local bid from Green River Construction, 1 bid from New Jersey, and then 1 from Salt Lake. The Green River bid was for us 2 bleachers 6 foot shorter than the Salt Lake bid, and they also bid $37,166 over what the Salt Lake bid was.
Okay. Sounds good. Have any questions?
No.
Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept or approve the bid for the Western Park bleachers to William Peterson in the amount of $21,943.58, including authorization of signature.
I'll second that. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Thank you. Okay, thanks. Okay, we have the need to recess into Board of Equalization, and so we'll recess into there. Then we need a recess hearing officer recommendations for partial 17522. Is that correct, Mike?
1752 and 2.
Okay.
Commissioners, this one went through Board of Equalization, but in our final review of it, the assessor's office is taking this off of Greenbelt, but it's actually off of Greenbelt for 2023. And when we presented, it was for 2022. So the hearing officer corrected his form and corrected the date on it. He recommends now the partial FA status for 2023 be removed and recommend the rollback and penalties be applied as already has been set and done. So we just need approval because it's the way he'd written up first, it was for 2022, but it was 2022. They kicked him off for the 2023 year.
Okay.
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 Does that change the rollback amount then?
No, rollback and everything stayed the same.
Okay.
Okay.
And this has been appealed to the State Tax Commission on this one.
So,
But we just need to approve it for the 2023 tax year.
okay. So we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the change, the recommendations for parcel 1752-2, to change the pivotal date from 2022 to 2023.
Okay, I'll second that motion. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. All right, thank you. Okay, we'll adjourn the Board of Equalization and reconvene into commission meeting. Matt, next item is ordinance number 228, 2022-01.
Okay, Commissioners, good morning. Matt Kazir with Community Development. Let's see, so first off, you'll notice that the ordinance number on this is 228-2022. Sorry, are the monitors turned on, Ty, the TVs? Could I get those turned on? The reason for that is that's the first time that this came before the commission. So it's been a work in progress since February, and part of February there. Anyway, just to get that on the record, that you can go back and check those minutes and things, just to keep things current in the record. While trying to get the TVs on, I'll just kind of explain what this is a little bit. This ordinance is dealing with Title 12, which is streets and public places. Within Title 12, Chapter 12.12 deals with road cuts. And these temporary pipelines were just being handled under that road cut section. And permitting and things like that was all running through that road cut section. It became apparent that some changes were going to need to be made to how these temporary pipelines get approved and some rules with them. And so we looked at where to add that, and we looked at adding that to 12.12 under the road cuts, but under a subsection of 150. So that's where we're at in the code. Now, this does show some red lines. Just for clarification, though, this whole section is new. It doesn't exist right now in our ordinance. And these are not the only changes that have been made to it over time. These are just the most recent changes. So, and these changes are based on a meeting that was held with Commissioner Haslam. You were there, myself, some members of the public, and then some members from industry. And there was discussion. I think some of these things were between the two different groups, between the public and people from industry. I think some of these were agreed on and other ones were kind of, well, they weren't necessarily agreed on. And so just kind of go through it quickly here on what the main, those changes were. I guess first of all, these applications will be submitted to our right-of-way or sign technician, who at this time is Jeff Ellis. That could change over time, so it's put in here as what his title is. So you can see here under A, instead of approving an application, it would be considering an application. And then based on the discretion of the right-of-way or sign technician or designee, certain conditions, exclusions, restrictions, or limitations may apply. And my understanding was that these changes here were kind of, for the most part, agreed upon by the different groups that were present at the meeting that was held several weeks ago. The next changes down here come under D. And this was, so D was generally for when lay flat lines were crossing driveways or accesses to private property. There was some discussion at the meeting that on occasion these lay flat lines will cross a county road, and we wanted to make sure that it was wide enough and sufficient for vehicles that are traveling on the road to pass and different things. And so it was added in to have them go 3 feet beyond the travel surface of the road as well. It was also brought up at the meeting that some of the roads may be wider than what a typical lay flat line might be able to cross. And so some language is also added in here that the right-of-way or sign technician can review that, and if everything will work, then they can do the lay flat line there, but they have to properly sign it and different things to let people know, hey, there's an obstruction up in the road ahead. In some cases, the right-of-way or sign technician might say, hey, let's bore into the road and get a pipe installed, and so that you can put the pipe in a culvert or something like that. So each one's going to have to be reviewed on an individual basis to make sure that that it's safe to be there in the road and that it will function properly, and that it's also marked and signed properly. The other changes under E, and this is all route changes must be resubmitted and approved before lines are laid, following the same process as the original application. So just some clarifying language was put in there to make sure that it was understood that they would have to resubmit the changes and they would be reviewed again by the county. And then there was a lot of discussion around F and G. No changes were made. It was decided that these were items that would have to come before the commission for a decision. So basically what F allows is it allows for them to have 2 renewals on a permit. So a permit is good for 60 days, and that's outlined under the general requirements of section 12 or chapter 12.12. So F would allow for 2 renewals of that 60-day period. So that would give them 180 days or 6 months in renewals. They do have to submit the application for the renewals, and it has to be before the original permit expires. And then under G here, if more than 2 permits are required to complete the project in any 24-month period, temporary pipeline shall receive approval from the county commission using the same application process as outlined in subsection A above. There was a lot of discussion around the 24-month period. In different iterations of this ordinance, it's been 12, it's been 36, and it's currently on there as 24. And again, I think there's a lot of discussion between the public and the user groups on 24 is too long for the public, and the user group would like to see 36. So it was just left as it was in this iteration, and it will be something that the commission can decide on. Just wanted to bring that out. And then the other change is down here under L, and it's talking about during installation, no equipment or material shall be parked or stored in driving lanes unless it's properly signed. And again, that was just to clarify that it's the material and equipment is only allowed in the driving lanes during installation. Once installation's over, everything, there might be pumps or generators or things like that that are part of the pipeline, but those all need to be put outside the travel lanes of the road. And then M, once installation is complete, there shall not be any equipment or materials within 3 feet of the driving lanes of the road, except for temporary pipeline crossings as outlined in subsection D, which is the section we went over earlier. It was brought up at that meeting that could be considered equipment, the lay flat line that crosses the road. So we wanted to make sure that would be allowed as long as they're following the proper rules. And then the other change here is under P, and there was a lot of discussion on this one. My understanding was that there was kind of agreement on this, but I think the parties are here so they can speak to it. But P is items B, C, F, and G will not apply to temporary pipeline projects that do not run along or across private property. So this would be for when there's a county road that's running out along BLM land or SITLA land, things that aren't private property. So B, C, F, and G would not apply to those installations. Let me hit one other thing that there was a fair amount of discussion on that I skipped over here because there wasn't a change on it, but let me get back up here. I think it's B. Yeah, item B here. Only fresh, treated, or conditioned water will be allowed to be transported in temporary pipelines per applicable state regulations. Again, in different iterations of this ordinance, there's been different language in there. I believe it started out as only fresh water. And then it's kind of went through different things, and it got to this point here. There was a lot of discussion on this at the meeting, and so I think that's also a point of maybe disagreements between the two groups as well. So I think that's what I've got, unless you guys have questions or you want me to go through different parts of this.
Do you have any questions? I know there's some public that would like to have comment on this one. And this is one that I think we ought to have a little discussion to bring, I was hoping both commissioners up to speed on it, where Commissioner Horrocks isn't here. Bring Commissioner Stringer up to speed, and then he can decide if he, from that point, if he wants to make a motion or not.
Okay.
So, did you have, I'm going to open it up to the users and the public there. If you'd like to get up and speak, all I'd ask is if you will state your name, and it'd be good if you state who you're representing, and go from there.
Do you want to put any time on them or anything like that?
We'll see.
Keep it brief.
My name is Jim Leakus. I'm a private landowner that has been affected by temporary pipelines in the county road right-of-way. I've also been an active participant in the drafting and redrafting of this ordinance, and following the latest draft, I made a couple of comments to Mr. Kazir that aren't reflected in this, and I'd like them to be brought up at this time. So on item B, speaking of what can be in the pipeline that is in the county right-of-way and running in front of people's private property, such as myself, I've had concern with the qualifying language that says per applicable state regulation, and made the comment that if there is an applicable state regulation, why not cite it? And if there is not one, then what good is this? So if there is a state regulation that governs what can be inside of a temporary lay-flat line, I recommend that it be cited. If there is not one, then I recommend that the language be modified to allow only discharge quality water in the temporary pipeline. And the EPA does define what discharge quality water is. My second comment is on letter F. By allowing a permit of 60 days to have 2 renewals, that becomes 6 months. And this ordinance is for a temporary pipeline, and I believe 6 months is much too long for a temporary installation. And if there is a need for a lay-flat line to be there for 6 months, and perhaps repeatedly, because it's allowed to come back every couple of years, they should seek a permanent solution rather than the use of the county's right-of-way for a temporary line. So my recommendation there is that there be only 1 renewal instead of 2. Letter G, I believe is somewhat, it's certainly confusing to me. They talk about 1 permit having 2 renewals. And in G, it talks about 2 permits. I believe the intention there was to talk about the renewals. So my recommendation there is that the word permits be changed to renewals. and that again, only one renewal be allowed. And then the final thing is there's no discussion of what happens when there is a need to access current existing right-of-ways that are also alongside the county road. In a situation that occurred last year with the temporary pipeline, the local culinary water company had a project to replace a culinary water line that the temporary lay-flat line laid on top of. And it created quite a bit of scheduling problems on who's on first. And since this is a ordinance covering a temporary use, I think there should be some language added that says this temporary use would have to yield to valid existing rights of way, such as power lines, water lines, sewer lines, and so forth. That concludes my comments. Any questions? Thank you.
Any other?
Hello, my name is Ricky Ranko Browning. I'm president of the Utah Petroleum Association. I want to start by thanking the commissioners and Matt and the landowners for working through this process for many, many months to get to the draft that's in front of you today that's being reflected. Our intent as operators is certainly always to be good neighbors and good community members. And from time to time, it seems we need to make some adjustments, and this is one of those cases. We have a number of members that are here today that are probably going to be prepared to make some statements, but I do sincerely want to thank the landowners impacted for working with us on this and for raising these issues. I think the draft in front of you today reflects a very good balance of giving the landowners a much better notification opportunity and engagement in the process that previously wasn't in place, while also striking that right balance of allowing for operations to proceed efficiently and in a cost-effective manner. As to water reuse, this was a critical issue for the industry to ensure that given the persistent drought that we are in and looks like we are going to continue to be in, and the changes to water reduction and water recycling and reuse, that we maintain the opportunity and ability to be able to reuse as much water safely as possible. Depending upon the specifics of where the water source is coming from and how it will be used, there could be varied rules that apply, hence our language here referring back to meeting any state requirements or any applicable requirements. Again, I just want to thank the Commission for the opportunity to work through this. I know that Chair Haslam and Matt have been spending a considerable amount of time on this. And again, we think that this ordinance strikes the right balance between meeting landowners' needs, being good community members, and operating effectively and efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Matt Betts, and I would say that I probably represent the public and the industry as well, both. Probably more the public, just for the sake of this conversation, has evolved in a certain geographical area in our county, which I have personal interest in outside of the industry. I feel like Jim did a very good job of explaining probably what most of our concerns are, but I'm going to beat up on number B just a little bit some more, because I feel like this is not taken as serious as it needs to be. We talk about reuse, recycle. We need to reuse our water. I 100% agree. Transporting this stuff through pipeline is definitely the most economical way. In the past, in some of our conversations and meetings about this, it's been brought up that if we go to Duchesne County, they're moving their production water, their flowback water, their salt water around the field all day, every day. They do. it's a lot different, program. They're not using lay flat line. They're using a product called Flex Steel, which is different grades, but I want to say 18,000 psi poly pipe with a stainless steel insert in the middle of it. They're burying it. It's rated for high temperature, high pressure. Lay flat line is not rated. I think, you're going to be lucky to get 200-pound lay flat line. You have temperature degradation with it. The flowback water, the production water that's coming is hot in most circumstances. So it's going to degrade the quality of the lay flat line. The chemicals, which probably get us to the point of referring to the water as treated or conditioned, they also degrade the line. And the bottom line is, if you're using lay flat line, you're going to experience discharges. And that's what we want to avoid, is the discharges on our agricultural ground, on our hay fields and our cornfields. And fresh water, I don't think anybody has any argument with that. Or if the verbiage said water suitable for discharge, I think that's fine too. If the EPA is going to say, hey, we'd pump this out on the ground, I don't see any arguments from the public. But being in the industry, I know what the water is, and I know what it does. I know what it does to a lot of different products, including steel. And so I think that needs to be worked on. It's not acceptable to just say treated or conditioned, or because treated and conditioned could be multiple different things depending on who's telling the story. You can throw a bag of biocide in a tank and call it treated. That doesn't mean it isn't a witch's brew. And every time this circulates out of the ground through the reuse process, anybody in the industry will tell you it changes. And we're dealing with different bugs. We're dealing with different gases, poisonous. We'll start to develop H2S. And so I think that there needs to be some pretty strict wording on what goes into that lay flat line. And in my opinion, I don't feel like there's any circumstance where produced water or flowback water should be circulated across the surface in this product, in this lay flat line. It's just not made for it. It's very good at what it's intended for, but stretching the boundary of it it's not well, and you will have discharges and problems without a doubt. So I would like to see that cleaned up and pretty strict on what's going to be allowed into there. I do think that if the EPA will classify it as dischargeable water, I see no problems there. But beside that, I see a serious problem. And just once again, in different parts of the country, I mean, I've saw these discharges out of lay flat line turn into tremendous liabilities and lawsuits and lots of money on both sides of the fence. So I do think that's definitely something that merits a lot more discussion or stricter wording. So that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, I do, Matt. Where did you started giving some statistics about what you thought the burst pressure was, and is there any literature, or is there anything, what are you going by on that?
Yes, I can provide you with that, definitely, from just about every manufacturer out there.
Okay, because I do know when you buy stuff, it tells you what it's rated for if you use it for its intended purpose. Mm. If you turn around and use it for something else, then they either disclaim that use or they set other standards for, if you deviate, this is what you should expect. So there is some literature on that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, and I'd be happy to share that with you. I can pull it up and send it to you, no problem.
Okay.
They give their rating pressures and temperatures, and then it degrades as you add chemicals and heat, and so their rating starts to degrade pretty rapidly, depending on what you're moving and the temperature of it.
Okay. You brought up Duchesne County and the flex steel line and different lines like that. Isn't this ordinance, is it addressing the lay flat line, or is it just a temporary pipeline? So it's not saying which line, what kind of line they're using.
Right, just temporary.
So we're not addressing the lay flat versus the flex steel versus any of that.
It may be different types and different scenarios
Okay.
under the ordinance.
Thank you.
Okay. So I guess that my comments would need to pertain to lay flat line. So.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Michael D. Merrill with Uintah, LLC. First of all, I just want to thank the commission, thank the landowners for working through this. I know it's been a rigorous process for the last 6-8 months, so just all the parties involved feel like we've worked pretty well together to try to resolve any concerns out there. Just really appreciate everybody's time. I know it took a lot of time in that sense, so major concern for Karis Uintah LLC is the drought concern that we're currently in. We feel that there's not enough fresh water out there to be able to do the fracking process that we would need to do to produce oil and gas and get it down the pipelines to the world in a sense now. So that's one of our major concerns, is having enough water, and hence the reason we try to use some of this produced water and treat it, chemically treat it, and get it cleaned back up to be able to share it to different wells, to be able to frack and use that with a little bit of fresh water added into it if needed be. So I know that Matt talked a little bit about the different types of pipe out there. I know flex steel is, I'm just going to touch on it real quick. It doesn't come in big enough to be able to produce that kind of volume we would need for a frack. Not yet. Hopefully someday they'll get there. We would love to see that. So I know on the recycled, treated, conditioned water, currently working with the state to be able to, we've found some new processes out there with our assets in Colorado, very strict in Colorado to be able to produce oil and gas. We're definitely working with Karis in Piance Creek to try to come up with better ways to treat the water, clean it up, make sure that it's viable to be able to get it to the fracks in a safe manner, environmentally, I guess, in a sense that we do. It's our backyard. We definitely don't want to do anything to mess up the environment on any land, whether it's private or public land. Sitla, which is in a sense its own private state land. So definitely want to share that with the community, that we don't want to ruin the environment in any way. So we're definitely willing to work. The process is what it takes to be able to use that reconditioned water. And then with the delays on the materials and supplies, with everything that the world has brought to the forefront in the last 2 years, you know, that there could be some time and scheduling that may have to push a frack from here to here, scheduling with frack companies, with all the drilling rigs in the Uintah Basin. It's honestly a scheduling nightmare to try to get everything to line up. So that's why we were trying to work with the commission, with everybody on this, to try to be able to get 2 renewals just in case of that process. So on the renewal process, if we can get everything to work, we're usually out of there. We usually don't need the 2 renewals, but it just, if the scheduling doesn't work out for us, then that's when we would go in and try to use that opportunity to schedule it out a little bit more for that. So again, just appreciate everything that the time and efforts that have gone in with the community, with the landowners, with the commission, with all of the other producers in the Uintah Basin. Just really appreciate everybody's time and efforts as they've gone into this. But we do approve the current, we agree to the current, how it's currently written. So any questions, Commissioner?
I got a question for you. When you talked about Colorado law, and Jim, I guess I'm same thing goes here. The EPA rule is the Utah rule unless the Utah rule is more strict. That's the deal. That's how they got the program in the first place. So is the EPA rule clear enough, or is there, you seem like you knew it. Maybe you're not up, so I'm just asking. Is Colorado the same way? Does Colorado have a different standard? Does it use the EPA rule for conditioned water?
I don't know,
Okay.
honestly. I just know
You
they
said
have,
they were strict over in Colorado. I was just wondering, are they more
the
strict?
whole
than-
oil and gas industry is more strict in Colorado versus Utah. But in the sense, as we work with Colorado, they have ways to clean the water better than we have had here in the past. So that's why we're working on that with our team in Colorado to, when we go to that process of fracking, then we will be able to clean it up in a better manner than it has been in the
So
past.
are you running produced water through your lines now, or not yet?
We haven't been fracking yet.
Okay. Is that part of the process, is to get an approval from the state before you do, or is the state not even looking at these lines?
The state probably doesn't look at the lines, but they look at our treatment ponds.
Okay.
And we work with them on the treatment ponds, and they say, okay, you guys are good to go to treat the water in your ponds. And that's the process that we go through with the state.
Right, but that's assumed the final destination of your water. It's not for discharge from there. or s-
No, they understand that we want to use it to refrac with because of the drought situation that we're in.
Okay, but again, it's how you get it from that pond back to the frac that they don't approve
Yeah.
the method or anything
They
like
don't
that?
they don't say anything on that method.
Okay.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Jake Woodland, and representing both me personally in one comment, and then maybe industry also currently representing Uintah. During the length of these discussions since February, was actually representing another industry member, UPA member, that being Finley Resources and Uintah Wax, but have had a change of venue in the process. On a personal note, and professionally, again, as has been said, thanking the commissioners and the landowners, Jim and Matt, Kazir, and all the others involved through lengthy processes in official meetings and unofficial meetings out in the field with landowners. On a personal note, and I know Matt Kazir didn't mean anything by this, but I want to make a point, and I feel like maybe it's due here, that a comment was made that we have industry and public. It's been said a couple of times, and I would just like to make the point that industry is public. That when we look at what public is, it exists here in the Uintah Basin in large measure because of industry partners. And I just would want to hope that divisiveness can be curtailed just slightly to make sure that we all understand that we're on the same page and trying to achieve the same goals ultimately with the health and economic economic benefits to our community where we all live and work. So with that said, I would like to reiterate what has already been said. I don't know that I have any new information, but rather just to add my my endorsement of what has already been said, specifically to the item B, or line item B, with a lengthy discussion regarding lay flat lines, that it's not only a lay flat ordinance, but it's a temporary pipeline ordinance. And I know that Commissioner Haslam brought that up. That was discussed at length. I know that we're not opposed to some type of clarifying language or authority, if absolutely necessary, granted to the permitting official. We recognize that there are different products being transported in different ways, different discharge permits, and we want to make sure, as has been said, that whatever we do does not have a negative effect on anyone, on our neighbors, on the environment, and that if there are some requirements that require a little clarification, that's understandable. But the point being that it's a temporary pipeline ordinance, not a lay flat ordinance. And so I think those are really the 2 points I wish to make, unless there's any questions from the commissioners or others.
I don't know if this is for you or maybe for Matt would know better. On a lot of pipe and a lot of different, you get your hoses and different things like that. The manufacturer puts together a list of what can and can't be ran through that, a fuel line or a water line, depending on what it is. Does the lay flat or does the flex steel or anything, do they have regulation of what you can run through them and what you can't? Do they have chemicals that can't go in them? I mean, as an owner of the lay flat line, I wouldn't want stuff running through there that.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm wondering if that doesn't regulate itself,
Right.
To that point.
And I don't know that I can give you a specific citation, but as with any product that you buy anywhere, it has an intended use and an approved use. And as operators, it's in our best interest to stay within those guidelines. We look at health, safety, and environmental with every operator. I don't know of any operator. I know of operators who are lacking in some departments, but every operator I'm familiar with at least has a robust HSE program. And that's part of that, is ensuring the health and safety for both their employees, both the neighbors and members of the community, as well as the environment. And that includes staying within those, MSDSs and those specifications, whether it's, a grade of steel to be used on a handrail versus what product could be going down any particular tubular or conveyance system.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none.
I need a clarification. Who was it, which one of you was mentioning the interference with the culinary power water line? Was that you?
That was Jim.
Jim, would you come back up, please? I got a couple questions for you. I don't think that there's any doubt whatsoever that the superior right is the water. How long was it delayed? Was there resistance to getting to that water line, or what happened?
Fortunately, in this case, we're in quite a rural area. The contractor for the culinary water had a plan to start at one end, work his way to the other end. When he got to where the lay flat line was, there was consultation between them and, I assume, the lay flat operator in this case, and they jumped over to the finish line and started working backwards from that end to give the line a chance to be finished with its intended use, which was there for a week or two. So there was cooperation between the two to get it done. My point when I made my initial comment was just to cover when you can't figure out a solution that you need to know which one yields to the other.
Okay.
And since I'm back up here,
Yeah.
if I could just bring up this concept of what's in the line and timing again. This concern about should what's in the line be of discharge quality should be of concern to whoever's land it is, but it's of particular concern to me when it's my land. I observed that there were nicks in this line that ran last year that undoubtedly occurred during installation. They drag this line sometimes, and you're going to get nicks and abrasions in it. And sometimes it sprayed water, small stream of water, for maybe a week before it was plugged. But every time they made a connection to change the location of a booster pump or something, there's a significant amount of water that is discharged on the ground each time that is done. It's not a leak, it's just part of the process. This line's got water in it, and when you open it up, that water's got to drain somewhere. And it should be everyone's concern that what ends up on the ground is in fact discharge quality water. I'm sure that my point about does saying per applicable state regulation cover that. It's that I don't think the existing language is clear enough to say what is it that state regulation is applying to. And that if we say discharge quality water, then that can cover every type of water you want in that line, whether it's reusing sewage water or flowback water or whatever, so long as it's discharge quality. And if you're mentioning the discharge quality per applicable state regulation, then it's covered.
Okay. You say significant amount of water. What's significant? And what are you?
Barrels.
Or whatever something's causing you to say significant. What do you think that is?
Well, when it leaves a large puddle of water with notable surface erosion, you know a certain large amount of water has flowed.
Does it stay on the road or does it go onto the private property?
In my case, most of the time on private property. It did run down the road in some cases in the ditch alongside the road.
Okay.
Now, if I could just, there was mention about the gentleman from Karis, I believe, is the one that brought it up about supply chain issues causing delays and therefore the need for the opportunity to renew multiple times. In my particular installation situation, there's a need to install a line from a source of water to a source of storing that water. We're not talking about drilling a well or completing a frack. We're talking about delivering water from point A to point B over and over and over again. And in those circumstances where you know it's a repeated use, my belief is the county road right-of-way is not the appropriate place for it. You should come up with a permanent solution to that particular situation, whether it means asking for the right to bury the line so that it's no longer sitting on the surface, or if they need to deal with the landowners to come up with an alternative route to go through private property to get it from point A to point B. But this is not the situation where I'm fracking or drilling and I might be there for 2 weeks and then I'm done and my line is gone and life goes on. Last year it was there for about 6 months and they need to put it there again. To me, we need to come up with a permanent solution, and the county's road right-of-way is not the appropriate place for that.
You said last year. Do you mean previous calendar year, or is the drilling season over for this year, or are they still out?
This was last calendar year.
Okay.
Have any further questions or discussion, recommendations? Matt?
Well,
Yeah,
from,
just come to this one. Is that on?
Sorry to have a twofer here, but just really quickly wanted to flag that this is an ordinance that will apply to any temporary pipeline by any entity in the county, right? So if we're talking about treated water, we're talking about fresh water, we're talking about oil and gas, we're talking about maybe a sewer line that needs to be on the surface temporarily. If we're talking about limiting this to carry only discharge quality water, that may create some unintended consequences considering all of the potential purposes that this ordinance may apply to. Just want to flag that for folks.
Yeah, we had sewer lines actually laying in it, going down 1,500.
Well, it used to be the accepted practice to run temporary lines in the county right away because BLM couldn't process right-of-ways fast enough. But the pipe was way more substantial than this. So it was analogous to a degree, but not exactly. So the problem for me here is that we do need to, it's going to be forced upon us to enter into conservation of water. That's what's going to happen from the Colorado River Compact. So we do need to find a way to reuse the water. I am a little concerned. I don't mind running produced water as long as the carrying medium will take it. Questions have been raised about the integrity of this type of pipe. I said if you want to, it sounds like if you run steel, great. I don't know if it's got enough minerals or enough speed to have, if you've got to put something in, do you have to do cathodic stations along? I don't know. I really don't know, but we've got to conserve the water. Simple. I don't know if we force the state to come up with some regulations and say, look, this is a real thing. What do you need to do? You can take the EPA rules, but the EPA rules are aimed at treatment ponds and re-inject, or injection wells. I don't know that they must have something like this. They've got enough people to do something for everything. But I've never actually run into any rules for this. So I don't know. The other thing that was raised was the right-of-way hierarchy. Those that have a permanent right-of-way below, they are superior right-of-ways. If the upper one's got to be moved, it's got to be moved. It's got to be shut down, it's got to be moved. I don't know if it helps to put that in the ordinance. I mean, that's a kind of a question for John, but a right-of-way issued for that, I can't imagine it becoming secondary to a temporary line. And as far as the timing on supply chain issues, that's a self-correcting problem.
I
think it, let me, if you don't mind, with Commissioner Stringer's question, it never hurts to have that clarity in the ordinance. I think property law would define that the permanent uses have the primary right, not a temporary use. So I think we'd be covered there, but it wouldn't hurt to have some language that if any of the transportation needs or permanent or utility lines and pipes that exist in that right-of-way, if there's a change in circumstances, then the temporary pipeline needs to, as Jim Lucas was saying, needs to yield to those uses. Having that type of clarity would, I think, help, even though I do think that's the governing law, but it would probably be good for everybody to just see that in writing. We may have a change in transportation needs, for example. So we permit it, but it doesn't give somebody the absolute right to be there. If for some reason transportation needs change and we need to get in there and do either work on the road or we're changing the use of the road, then it needs to yield. And for that matter, even the public utilities have to yield to the transportation needs.
Anybody from the industry that wants to field this question, do those, when you're running fresh water through them, I don't know if there's a lifetime that they're supposed to have on those hoses or those lines, particular lines. They're clearly temporary. I don't think they're in, if you wanted to run one for a quarter of a mile for years and years, you'd probably run steel, plastic. But the question is there, sea cans, they ride those ships back and forth, they're still pretty competent, but after how many trips they got to go, you can't use them again. Is there any lifetime on these? How long have these things need to be scheduled out because they're, I don't know, do they have a wear and tear like that? Do they?
Yeah, that's what I was bringing up earlier, right? I mean, I don't think any of the industry owns their own lay flat line, do they? I mean, they all just hire it out to a company that regulates it, same as a water truck company. If you call them to haul the water, they have these companies out there that are coming to lay the line for them. And if we need to put something in there that, you know, that identifies what can be put in the line, it would have to just go off what that line's rated for.
Well, then who carries the insurance?
Well, that's, as we had talked, the companies, if I
What
understand this
company?
correctly,
The owner of the pipe or the user of the pipe?
the user of the pipe, the liability comes back on them.
Okay.
And that's
Well,
where
those are-
I want to be very clear on this. We've talked to the state. I've called on this. I've had discussions with Matt and everybody on this, trying to decide, because the county doesn't regulate water. We don't have anything to do with what that is. And when I talked to the state in different areas of this, and I think it was Karis that came up and talked about how they have their pits, you know, tested, and they say, yeah, this is good to go back and reuse this water. At that point, all the states said, well, when the water truck backed up to it and hooked into it, and Matt, you might be able to answer this question, and they take it to the well, would they placard any differently than they didn't want to? They weren't going to decide. They weren't going to tell the company how to get it to location. If it's good to go down the hole, they weren't going to say, yeah, you're going to put it on here and placard it differently than if it was in a water line. They won't take a stance on that either right now. So I don't know how to do that.
Well,
do you placard the water if it's been treated? Is it placard any differently when you're hauling it?
Well, and that sounds a little bit like the state when we were looking before injection, when we were having trouble getting all the water injected, and they were trying to find something on the west side. One of the things the state wouldn't do is they would not give a discharge permit out of a pond, because when you test the water in the pond, it's for that time and that day. And to say, yeah, you can take this water out of this pond and go put it all over the roads, they won't do that because they don't know what the pond's going to look like
Tomorrow.
2 days, 2 weeks later. They would never do that. We tried.
Yeah.
Just real quick and probably somewhat pointless, no. They don't make you placard that load of water, but if you tip it over and spill it, you're digging the dirt up and hauling it back to the disposal and replacing with native. So.
Right.
So they don't want it on the ground.
Yeah, the same as if the line broke, they're gonna have to do the same thing.
One more. And to you, Commissioner Stringer, there's 5.8 gallons in 1 foot of 12-inch lay flat line holds 5.8 gallons.
5.8 in 1 foot. Okay.
What is a spill out there now? Reportable spill, 20 barrels?
Depends on what it is.
5 barrels?
Depends on who's watching.
Grizzle with Karis, Uintah. For the state of Utah, it's 5 barrels. So, for instance, on Mr. Leakis's land, he was covered still underneath the state of Utah. Even if it's less than a barrel or less than 5, then it's not necessarily reportable then, but it still has to be cleaned up.
Right.
It still doesn't matter. He still has those rights where the company needs to come in, remove all that soil out of there, test it, but that all falls back underneath DEQ to see what levels it needs to go back to. But as far as BLM, it's still 10 barrels, but state of Utah, it's 5.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter what liquid it is that's spilled on the ground underneath Division of Oil and Gas Standards. It says any liquid that's on the ground. Doesn't define whether it's produced water, frack water, this water. It's any liquid that's on the ground.
Any liquid on the ground, you have
read
to
the
go
regs,
through
it
this.
says any liquid.
Okay.
So in his case, for instance, that was evidently doesn't sound like it was reported to UDOGM, and it should have been reported to UDOGM that they had a spill if it was going off the size that he said it was.
The regulations that you're referring to there, do you know where that is?
It's underneath their undesirable event one. I can't remember what number it is, but it's right underneath there. You go in there and you can look it up underneath their undesirable events is where it's right underneath there. I don't know exactly what the right number, but I could find it for you. Was it 649?
I'm just wondering if that's,
Like, for instance, the same with the valve opening. And when they open a valve and they do spill it right there, that's still considered a spill underneath UDOGM guidelines underneath that as well too. So if it was over 5 barrels, then that would be considered reportable if they go out and they dump out any more than that. But that was lowered 2-3 years ago from 10 barrels down to 5 on that end.
so something like that, what we need to add to that in the state.
One issue you may have with adding something, you may miss something that you're not aware of as well.
Yeah, we usually try and keep our language broad for that very reason. If we miss it or if it gets amended, then our code is now out of date or inapplicable in a certain situation. So all we're doing is saying we're only dealing with, in this ordinance, is dealing with the actual structure of the temporary pipeline.
Yeah.
Anything that's going in it, if it's not authorized to be discharged, then it is regulated, because the regulation is you shall not discharge, right? It's the whole cradle to grave type situation. So we're not allowing any discharges through the pipeline. It's only a conveyance mechanism. But in that instance, I would say let's keep the language broad and only applicable to state. If anything, we would just say to state or federal. That'd be the only other addition, because they usually claim the field on a lot of those topics, and we wouldn't even be able to regulate if we wanted to.
So on B, we need to put state and federal?
I'm just assuming that with liquids, usually there's a federal component on what happens and where it's going. If it's anywhere near any wetlands or anything like that, there's going to be federal laws or regs that are going to apply if there is a punctured line and if there is then an accidental or some other type of discharge into those waterways. So if anything, I would just add that, but I would still keep it pretty broad.
What?
I'm just thinking, just get moving on, but what we can, do you have any wording that you'd like to propose to get changed? Would you want to have a further discussion with Commissioner Horry?
I think this is really, really close.
It is.
My only, my concern would be, again, we don't manage the contents of the line, and that if we should be careful about going there. I don't think quite realize the impact of putting state and federal regulations on there, because I can already, there's some stuff that we haven't even thought about here that the Fed has a finger in. But if the EPA or the state is under a program, if the EPA will allow it, then it's allowed. As far as the pipe is concerned, I know it sounds great to say, no, we're on top of it. Well, we have little spills, and if something happens, we'll take care of it. Deepwater Horizon thought their Rams were going to close that too, but it didn't. So anyway, I don't know. I think it's close. I think it needs to be done. There needs to be conservation of water. It's that simple. Got to do it. But how you do it, I'm leaning, I would like to see hardline put in place, but I understand why lay flat works. I have not seen the specs, and I'm sure that the folks that lease the line and the people that use it need to be aware of, be sure you got quality stuff that will actually take the pressure and the quantity and the composition. But I don't know if that's us doing that or if that's dog 'em. They want to regulate everything else, oil and gas. So it sounds like there's a couple of things that need to be enhanced, like the right-of-way. And I maybe change that to state and federal, appropriate state and federal regulations. Matt, I'd still like to see the specs you got on that if you can. Thank you. Okay.
And then, sorry, just to clarify, when you said the right-of-way, talking about which a permanent right-of-way.
It sounds like they worked something out. And now I know if somebody's trying to frack their well and they really don't want to interfere, but if you lost a power line, a gas line, or a water line that's feeding people, and you go, no, we can't shut that off can't they wait another couple days? We'll halt. So, no. The superior right is the public utility below. And you don't go out and just shut them off right then, but it's got to you've got to yield, as John said. You got to yield to the public right away.
Okay. Is that some language you could help me with, John, to make sure that it's legally sound?
Yeah, but just because I had a Thanksgiving holiday.
All right.
Is lay flat season over yet for the year? Is it still going on? Still going on?
Still using it.
Okay. I said I wanted to get those couple changes. I don't know if you want to approve it with conditioned on the changes or if you want to see the changes.
I'm just going to put it up for a motion. If you choose to make a motion, that'd be great. If not, we'll table it and move it to.
I'm very comfortable with the two changes I've talked about, but I want to see more. And this goes for either way. This comes from the industry. This comes from what Matt has said that he has. What is the useful lifetime? Who's watching it? What is the MSDS? Although there's a new name for MSDSs now. But what is it? How long can you use those before you have to replace them? How far can you go with them? So, pardon me? Oh, no. Come back up if you got something. But I just would like to know a little bit more about it before we automatically say, oh yeah, the industry will do what it knows is best.
I believe that the typical manufacturer recommendations, I wouldn't call them MSDSs, they make recommendations on these things. I've studied it extensively in the past. I want to say 3 to 5 years is the usable lifespan, as long as we don't start exceeding recommendations and putting it through more than it's recommended for.
Okay.
David Yaden with Coda Resources. There's multiple different types of lay flat and multiple different ways to inspect, but just so you know, with what our requirement is like Jim was talking, when you have a little nick in the line or this, that, and the other from installation, upon every time we lay out a line, we air test it first. So we'll fill the entire line with air, check for those little nicks and leaks, make sure it holds its pressure for X amount of time. Then we take, on our instance, we'll take and flood it with fresh water. So we flood it with fresh water and double check again. That's our second fail-safe. And then when we're using a produced or a treated or a conditioned water, we make sure and use stainless steel heads. They have frac guard, chemically treated lay flat line that is resistant to the chemicals that you're talking of. And then where you put temporary pipelines, that's a good point, because if we go through a canyon or if we go through this, we have that option to use a double-lined temporary lay flat. We can use HDPE, we can use flex steel, fiberglass steel, but we'll take those recommendations and go off the pressure, the treatment of the line. And then also we'll stage valves throughout the line so that we have emergency response. We have pressure brakes. We'll put booster pumps to lower the operating pressure. For instance, we require a 200 PSI line and our average operating pressure is 50 PSI. So we take all that into consideration and try to do our best as an industry and whatnot.
So you're talking about things that you do that sound like your company practice. Does any of that inspected, required, or laid out by a regulatory agency? Or is that just your best practices?
That's our best practices. We try to do our best to be environmentally friendly, and so that's our best practice.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion.
Decline to make a motion at this point.
Okay, for a lack of a motion, we will change the wording and bring it back.
Okay.
I just want to thank everyone. This has been a long project and a process, but it's been a good one. Getting a lot of information out there, and I appreciate all your time. So thank you.
And I'll get these changed and I'll get it out and I'll let you know when it's going to be back on the agenda as well.
Let's try to get it on
Is there
sooner
any
than later.
chance you could get us a meeting with, I'd like to talk to Dogum
Okay, I can reach out to them
down
and see.
and ask them some of these pointed questions.
Okay.
Okay, next one, Matt. You're up again. Ordinance number 1114202202.
Okay. So again, you can see this ordinance has a different date than today. That's because it was presented back on the 14th of November initially. And I think at that time, Commissioner Haslam was gone. And the other commissioners knew that you had some interest in this. And so it was tabled at the November 14th meeting. Okay, so this ordinance, again, just to go over this again, this ordinance is changing the order of the process in which we use to record a certificate of non-compliant building or structure on a property. And then it's also changing who authorizes that recordation as well. So so the section 14.16.070 already currently exists. And so the red line changes here are changes to an existing county code. And so what you can see is in that first section, it's just taking out Board of County Commissioners and leaving it more broad as just the county or any other public official or private citizen from taking other lawful action with regard to violation of the building code, which the building code is adopted by the city of Utah, and then it's mandated that each city, town, and county enforce the building code that the state adopted. Okay, so the changes come down here under B. And again, everything that's crossed out has been reworked in. It's just in a little bit different order. And so what it's doing here under B, it's moving the approval of the recordation from the Board of County Commissioners to the building official. And so it'd be up to the building official, who currently at this time it's myself. Again, that's changed over the years, and it could be somebody different at any point in time, but right now it is me. And so it would give the building official the right to record a certificate of non-compliant building or structure on a building that is in violation of the state adopted building code. After it has been posted at the site in a conspicuous location that the building or a building on the site is in violation. It's not always on the building that's in violation, because we can't always get to the building that's in violation. Sometimes it's at the front door of the home or on the front of the home, or sometimes it's on a gate. You know, if the driveway is gated off or something like that, then sometimes it's posted there on the gate, but it's posted on the site. If the site does look like it's not frequented very often, then we'll also send that notice out to the property owner as well. So that, you know, they're not 3 months down the road coming out and finding this on their gate. So in the past, we would still post the violation at the site, but then we would send a certified letter to the owners as well. And then it would come to the commission for authorization to record that notice. The recorded notice was never signed by the commission, it was just authorized to be done. It's been signed by the building official or a designated person in the office. At this time, it's currently the deputy building official that's been signing those. What this will do is it would just flip that process around. So once the property's been posted and notice that there's a violation, then the certificate of non-compliant building or structure could be recorded. And then we would send the notice and order out to the owner, letting them know that, number one, that it's in violation. Number two, that something has been recorded on the property stating that it's in violation. And then it will also let them know of any fees that are associated with the violation. And then it will give them an appeal process. Currently under the ordinance, it's 10 days. That was kept the same. I know that Commissioner Stringer brought up that you may want to look at changing the number of days there. And that notice and order would be sent out. So it's either going to be given directly to the property owner by a county employee or sent certified mail. Those are the two ways that it would be delivered. And so those are the changes to this. Part of that is the appeal, and the appeal would come to the county commission. And it's not an appeal of the building code. The state has already outlined how that happens, and there's a state board that handles appeals to the building code. But this appeal would be to the process of how things happen that would come to the county commissioners if it was appealed.
Okay. I do like the idea of adding a few more days. 10 days I don't think is enough.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so that's right here under C, within 10 days. Let's see now, see. Oh, it's not the right 10-day mark here. Okay, so this just says within the time limit stated within the notice. Oh, right here, of not less than 10 days. There we go. Sorry, that was something that wasn't changed. Thank you.
do you want?
What?
How long do you want?
10 days is a lot for a working person sometimes to get, digest, and decide and ask, what to do. I wouldn't go any less than 15. I mean, some people think that's still pretty short, but it's, my whole concern about any and all of this is, since it would come back to the commission based on process, is that you will do your best to eliminate any arbitrary timeframes, anything arbitrary about any of this. If we don't need to pass something for the manual, but you need to say, hey, if somebody comes to us within 5 days, then we can work with them. You can't have, depending on who it comes to, one person get 10 days, one get 20. Just do the same for everybody, be sure it's clear. And that way, when it comes to any commission, they can say, yep, followed your rules, it's perfectly fine. So whatever you set, just be sure you can live with it.
Yeah.
And then try and remember that not everybody doing this has lawyers, and sometimes they're gonna need your help to get it done.
Right. And our goal is always helping them get into compliance, not, even if things do end up in court, the goal still is compliance, not necessarily jail time or fines or fees, things like that.
If I remember correctly, we had it thrown up that some people ended up buying a non-compliant house because this process is so long, and we would certainly like to try and help a young couple trying to buy their first house know what they're getting into, but we can't eliminate all the risk. We just have to do our best, and if we go through and say, well, this is how we're going to run it, and their mortgage company does their due diligence, they'll catch it. So,
yeah.
Other than that, I'm okay with
Okay.
what I've seen.
So you want to go to 15 days?
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve ordinance number 11/14/2022-02 with the change discussed regarding the appeal period, change from 10 to 15 days,
Okay.
including authorization of signature.
I'll second that motion. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
All right, thank you.
Next item is public comment.
My name's Steve Hubert, a concerned citizen. This last ordinance you just talked about gives Matt all the authority to do whatever he wants. Them red tags he was talking about are extortion letters. They're threats of fining before due process. The notice of order letter that he sends you, in that letter, he says that if you don't write him an appeal letter, then he's able to take the authority away from the county commission to waive the code. And when I got involved in this, was kind of over one of this. And I got a meeting with the county commissioners. Bill didn't come into that meeting, and Bill said that we ought to come, if we didn't want to aggrandize ourselves in a meeting like this in the comment section. Well, I was there, and Bill didn't come in. He stayed outside, and he kept trying to break up the meeting. I told you guys that I was not mad at anybody. What I was mad at was the system. And before it was over, I explained if them codes didn't pertain to an individual, then they could be waived by the county commission, and that's true. But you're really concerned about these codes and the laws that the individuals, the citizens, might be breaking. When you guys was told in that meeting that you was breaking the law when you put a mandate on the Tri-County Health down there that we had to get a COVID vaccination to get in there. You guys just ignored it. And John was in that meeting. It went on there for 4 or 5 months. Then I went and took the statute to the sheriff. The sheriff sent you the mandate. Then even after that, you called an illegal meeting with Tri-County Health because I told you that they was the one that called the mandate, and you was sending a county employee down there to enforce it. So you went and called that meeting, which was an illegal meeting with Tri-County Health, and all 3 of you back to Tri-County Health. Well, I called the sheriff, and shortly after that, it come out over the radio that you didn't need that COVID vaccination anymore. So you started obeying the law then. But you don't care about the law. And these county codes are administrative codes. They are not law. And then after that, you went ahead and created an unelected bureaucratic department, which went against the law. And I explained it in my presentation, why it was breaking the law, why it was not following Senate Bill 162. I even went and talked to Damon, the other county attorney. And I do have an audio of the meeting that we had 2 years ago, or approximately. And I have an audio of the meeting I had with Damon. Now, if that ain't law, then what I presented in that meeting, I explained why you guys couldn't do that. What you did was overthrow our government. You took the power out of the auditing department and put it in an unelected bureaucratic department that you guys are in control of. And I think that county attorneys are complicit in not following the law. That's my statement. And if I'm wrong, you're willing to call me in and talk to me.
Any other? No other public comment? Those are great holidays that we had this last week. Turnout was amazing. Travel and Tourism Department, all the volunteers, all the employees, everybody that volunteered, they did a great job with that. With that, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming, and we'll adjourn the meeting.
Move to adjourn.